Hello, everyone. Welcome to Libra season of Expansive Astrology. I'm Melissa O'Malley, and I'm so excited to open up Libra season for you. This video is going to be pretty much everything you need to know about what Libra is, what Libra brings to the table, and how to take the fullest advantage of what this season brings and what we can bring to our lives using Libra, using this season. So let's just hop into it, shall we? Libra is an air sign. It's a cardinal sign ruled by Venus. It is represented by the scales, the image of the scales. It's ruled by the Justice card in the tarot, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about the Empress card because the Empress card is ruled by Venus. The phrase for Libra is I balance. I balance. And Libra lives in the 7th house of relationships. So what does that all mean? Let's break it down. Libra is one of the 4 air signs. One of the 3 air signs. The others are Gemini and Aquarius. And the air signs have to do with our brain chemistry, our thinking, our mental processes, are the way that we communicate. It is said that Libra or air signs in general need to understand every person and every situation properly and fully. Air signs are very cognitive. Libra being a cardinal sign, along with Aries, Cancer, and Capricorn, means like the cardinal signs provide support and stability. They can be initiating and like leading. That's an energy of like leadership. The cardinal signs are the ones that like get the show on the road and get things moving. They affect change. They can be forceful and overwhelming. And Roy Gillette compares cardinal sign or compares these aspects of the signs to a bowl, a spoon, and the ingredients. The ingredients are the mutable signs that can be mixed up and changed and altered. The bowl is the fixed signs that kind of hold things stable, and the spoon is the cardinal signs. The spoon is what gets things moving, stirs things up, gets the show on the road. So being ruled by the planet Venus means that Libra is all about love, beauty, and sex. The energy of Venus really encompasses the energy of pleasure and how we love. We get to explore like what turns you on? What do you treasure? Where do you find pleasure in terms of sex and sexuality and other things? This includes passion and pleasure, even for those who don't like engage in sex, because not everyone engages in sex, right? So this includes where and how we find passion and pleasure, not just in terms of sex. Like we often think of passion and pleasure in terms of sex, and it means so much more than that, right? Who and what do we value? And how do we show that appreciation for what we value? Venus brings us an invitation to be in connection with the gifts that are right here, all around us, all the time. This is about opening ourselves up to receiving pleasure. And that comes up even more so with the Empress card in the tarot. So notice what is around you right now that lights you up and is beautiful. What brings you a sense of security and harmony? I think that Libra season is a time to tap into this and really honor this and start to notice these things. Notice what is around, what can I tap into right now, wherever I am, that lights me up and brings me pleasure and makes me feel beautiful and like the world is beautiful. And that's not always easy to find. right? Let's just say that's not always easy to find. So we get to really flex the muscles that allow us to find beauty and pleasure in the world. Venus, this type of energy can be really disempowered when we are always seeking more, when we maybe are like resistant to just being content with what is around. So that's where the work comes in, right? Venus has a beautiful ability to create more and more beauty. And so there's definitely like room for that. There's a time and a space for that to create more and more beauty, and that can be disempowered when we refuse or neglect to see what is already beautiful that exists around us. Practice being content this season. And we'll get a lot more into that type of practice, and how can we be content when some things are so screwed up. I don't mean to laugh at that because it's very serious. How can we find a sense of balance and contentedness and pleasure and beauty, even when things are imbalanced, or even in the face of injustice? We're going to talk about that a lot more. Now, Libra is represented by the scales of judgment, which is where it's said that this is where souls are weighed. We see the scales used in Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, and even still used today in like our justice system, right? In Egyptian religion, the scales of judgment were used by Anubis. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Anubis was the master of balance, and he guided the dead through the underworld and made sure that they were judged fairly. This was Anubis's whole shtick. In one bowl of the scale, the heart of the dead would sit, and in the other, the truth with a capital T would sit, represented by a feather. And so the heart of the dead would be weighed against the truth with a capital T. In Egyptian religion, the soul must be in harmony with the truth before it could move on into the afterlife. And like I said, we see the scales used as a symbol even in our modern systems. It's a symbol of being just and impartial and fair. This is something to consider as we move throughout the season. Libra lives in the 7th house, which is the house of partnership and relationships. So this is going to be a big, big topic this season. How we relate with others in the world. How we find comfort with others, even if it's new and unfamiliar. How we find or engage with intimacy, where we are resistant to engaging with intimacy. And remember that as the better able we are to understand what is outside of us and how we relate with and impact what is outside of us, we are better able to understand ourselves. So this is so important. Using this 7th house of partnership and relationships can really teach us so much about how we show up and how we engage with the world, and how we can be better or more effective, how we can provide for ourselves better and more effectively, how we can provide for our relationships better and more effectively, where they are satisfying both for us and for the people that we impact, the people that we come across. So relationships and partnership are a huge theme for this season, and I encourage you to use this season to really tap into that and really take a look at that and really experiment with how you're showing up in your partnerships, in your relationships. So Libra in its most aligned and powerful and empowered place, is willing to be outgoing. Libra is very charming, it's careful, it's diplomatic, it's a brilliant host, able to provide security and harmony to its surroundings. Libra is friendly and reliable and harmonious, considerate and honest. It's delighted to enhance the experience of others. It's a master of creating the comfort zone, which is another thing that we get to really explore this season is our own personal comfort zone and how we maximize our comfort in our comfort zone, but then also how we make sure that we're not limited by our comfort zone. You know what I mean? Where do you limit yourself and where do you refuse to step outside of your comfort zone? Libra is the peacemaker. It seeks justice. It seeks balance. It's optimistic. It's able to see all different perspectives and understand other people's points of view. It's creative and adaptable and open-minded. So those are the types of qualities that we really want to tap into and foster within ourselves, and we get to use Libra and everything that Libra brings to do that for ourselves. Now, disempowered Libra energy, these are the qualities that Libra can be or bring that aren't so helpful, healthy, or effective. So these are the qualities that we really want to also make sure we're looking out for and noticing within ourselves. And I really believe that every time we find ourselves in these disempowered type energies, we can make a choice to empower ourselves and shift into something that feels a little more empowered and aligned, right? So watch out for these types of traits. If you are self-indulgent, which isn't always bad, right? I'm all about like prioritizing ourselves and like having a healthy dose of selfishness in our lives. There's a difference between like treat yourself and find beauty and pleasure in your life. There's that, and then there's being like self-indulgent, right? Be careful. Libra can have difficulty coping with imbalance or change because Libra is the sign of finding and creating balance, right? So how do you cope with it when things are not balanced? Because we have to, right? We have to cope somehow. Libra can be really defensive when it feels threatened. So how do you react? How do you respond when you're feeling threatened? How can you respond in an empowered way? How can you defend yourself without being defensive? Where did I talk about that more? I think I spoke about that more in Cancer season. So you can look back at that. Libra avoids conflict sometimes. Disempowered Libra avoids conflict. Empowered Libra knows that conflict is sometimes necessary and is willing to engage in healthy conflict. So where do you fall on that scale? Are you quite a people pleaser? Which we're going to talk about later this season, is people pleasing and how to engage in healthy conflict to make sure that our relationships are as healthy as they can be. Because avoiding conflict might feel like the more comfortable option. It might feel like the better choice, but that's not empowered and that's not healthy, right? Along with that, disempowered Libra can just kind of be complacent and inactive, unadventurous, people-pleasing, overly optimistic. It can, because Libra is so interested in beauty and comfort and pleasure, sometimes that can mean like living in denial or being in denial about the things that do need to change and the things that aren't working well and the things that aren't comfortable. Like I think Libra can sometimes kind of like shut its eyes to those things. And again, when we shut our eyes to those things, we're unable, it's impossible to affect change, right? We have to be willing to see what is so that we can change it. And we're going to talk about a lot more about that next week in Libra season week 2. But I'm going to talk about the tarot and the justice, the big, huge, ginormous topic of justice. Let's see, along with like being people pleasing, Libra can sometimes like give itself away too easily. It can love too easily. Do you relate with that? How can you empower yourself in terms of how you give away your love? Libra can be self-centered, narcissistic. That's that kind of like, the words hoity-toity come to mind, like hoity-toity Venus energy. You don't want to be narcissistic. You don't want to be self-centered. There's a balance that needs to happen there, right? Where we honor ourselves and we find beauty for ourselves and we create what brings us pleasure and joy without like trampling on others, or without like just you want to be empowered about how you go about those things. And if you're being narcissistic or if you're being too self-centered, that's not empowered. That's really disempowered. That's icky energy. That's like shadowy energy. How can you empower yourself using the gifts of Libra? Libra can also be indecisive. I think because Libra being an air sign and being able to see all these different points of view and see all this potential for beauty and balance and justice, having so many options and having such a wide worldview can cause us to kind of freak out and freeze. And again, being indecisive or being in denial about what needs to change. And Libra can be dependent. And we're going to talk about that in week 3 when I talk about relationships, and we really dive into how we engage with relationships and how we engage with conflict. Do you find yourself to be overly dependent on your relationships in one way or another, whether that means like you're dependent on relationships for a sense of self-worth, you're dependent on your relationships to like it can mean a million different things. Where are you giving away your power by being too dependent on relationships? How can you empower yourself and engage in healthy relationships, right? So the challenge with Libra is in improving our relationships, in managing the way that we might be people pleasing. The challenge is in shifting away from an external locus of control, which means being dependent on external things, external people, external factors, in order to feel a sense of ease and a sense of contentedness. A challenge with Libra is never feeling satisfied. How can you find satisfaction with what exists right here, right now? And the work that we did in Virgo season really helps to set us up for that even more. Virgo was all about making the most of what exists right here, right now, right in front of you. So we get to continue to practice with that. Again, engaging with a healthy, happy comfort zone that isn't too safe. Do I want to say that? Like, we want to be safe always, of course. Maintain your safety and your sense of safety. And are you doing yourself a disservice by staying in your comfort zone? Where do you depend on things outside of you? Are you able to provide the same comforts for yourself that you provide to others? Libra, again, is so brilliant at making others comfortable and creating harmony and balance. Do you do that for yourself too? Because it's common for Libra and Libras to feel really discontent in their relationships. And I think that's because Libra does such a good job at providing for others and bringing comfort and joy and beauty to others. And that's not everybody's strength, right? So how do you cope with that? How do you deal if you feel like these favors and those sorts of things aren't returned to you? Remember, not everybody loves the same way you love. And this goes for everybody, not just like Libras. I'm talking about everyone. Libra energy, not just Libras. So how do you like just remember that not everybody loves the way you do, and are you able to honor that? Are you able to both receive and accept and bask in the love that you are given, and ask for more? Are you able to ask for what would feel best to you? Or when those things aren't given to you, do you become really disempowered and disappointed? We'll talk more about that in week 3. Libra has an ability to create beauty even in the midst of things that seem horrifying or terrible. It's a beautiful gift. How do you, whether you're a Libra or not, how do you create beauty even in the midst of horrible, terrible things? This is all about, we get to explore how we express affection and enjoy beauty. How do you enhance the experience of others? How do you enhance your own experience? Now, Libra is so great at seeing all different perspectives, and it can get really stuck in that mental energy of assessing or fretting over what exists and the potential for change. Fretting over finding balance, fretting over or just feeling a lack of patience in those times. So we get to experiment with, this is all about learning how to hold the vision of what you see as possible and what could be more comfortable, more beautiful, and holding acceptance for where we are now. And remember, that can be really fucking hard. Acceptance does not necessarily mean approval. We don't have to approve of anything, especially things that are unjust or imbalanced or downright harmful or abusive. We don't have to approve of anything. But finding acceptance for these things I would argue, is imperative. It's imperative to accept that these things exist and that the situation is what it is. We have to accept that, because the opposite of acceptance is denial, right? And when we're in denial, we're not able to affect change. When we're in denial, we are not empowered to create what we want to create. So a big topic this season is accepting what is. I'm going to say again, acceptance does not mean approval. And I think we get really caught up in that. We get really trapped in that. Like, I can't accept the fact that this isn't fair. I can't accept the fact that I'm giving so much more than I'm receiving. Fair. That's a fair feeling to have. And I think it's important to work toward acceptance, because acceptance and approval are totally different beasts. You don't have to approve of any of this shit, but you do have to accept what is and accept where we are in order to change it. So more on radical acceptance later. How do you find center even when things are not centered? And Virgo really sets us up for this. This is more of making the most out of what exists, tapping into our power and embracing how we can make the most out of what is, finding balance, finding center, even when things are not centered. In Virgo season week 2, I believe, I talked about being the calm, knowing presence in the midst of like potential disaster. Go back and check it out. But I use an example from a book called Being Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh. Brilliant person, brilliant book, one of my favorite books ever, I think. And Thich Nhat Hanh uses the example of the calm, embodied, patient, mindful person on the small boat when the boat is in the midst of a storm, and how that person holds the power in the boat, where the other people who may be totally freaking out, warranted, right? It'd be warranted to be freaking out if you're on a small boat in the middle of a storm, of course. And freaking out is not empowered. Freaking out is not helpful in any way. It's not helpful. The people who are freaking out look to that one person or those few people who are able to remain centered and calm and trusting and knowing, right? So we get to really practice being that person more and more and more and more. We also get to continue to practice adjusting our perspective and embracing the idea of perspective, right? Just knowing that this is my perspective and it's different from anybody else's perspective. I think there's so much power in recognizing that, especially in the midst of challenges or conflict. Embracing how your perspective may differ from others and honoring both what your perspective is and honoring the fact that it isn't the truth with a capital T. It is valid and it is what you are experiencing. It is your truth, but it is not the truth, if that makes sense. There's like a distinct difference there, and it can be hard to parse out. So this is a season of sacred balance, sacred resourcing. Lindsay Mack says, quote, Libra really calls us to say, can we find nourishment and medicine in where we are currently, knowing that there's still room to evolve? There can still be room to shift and change. It really invites us to see where we are without judgment, so that we can be free to adjust in time if we can. We have to start with what's true and what's actually right here in order to move into where we'd like to be, unquote. The brilliant Lindsay Mack, as always. This is why in this season, we're going to be really revisiting radical acceptance. Like I said, we have to start with what's true and what exists in front of us in order to move into where we'd like to be, in order to move into more comfort, more presence, more beauty, more pleasure. Radical acceptance and justice, two huge topics this season. How do we deal with the things in life that are not fair? How do we deal with that? What do we do with that? Do you look at those things? Do you not look at those things? Just something to consider. How do we deal? Especially when there may never be an explanation as to the why of it all. How do we deal with the times that we find ourselves asking, like, why did this unfair thing happen to me? Why is this unfair thing happening in this country? Why is this unfair thing existing in my life? What was the purpose? We may never know, right? So how do you deal with that? The season is about, we get to practice finding the beauty in everything. I have a friend who will sometimes post, here's just a quick little trigger warning about animals, dead animals. I have a friend who will post roadkill that she comes across on Instagram. And for me, it's triggering to see. I hate to see roadkill in real life, and I don't expect to see it as I'm scrolling through Instagram. And I haven't talked to them about this, but I don't know. So I don't know what their intention is, but it sure is a challenge, right? How can we find beauty even in that, even in roadkill? Seems crazy, seems radical to even be talking about. And we get to practice flexing that muscle. How can we find beauty in everything? How can you find beauty in brushing your teeth? How can you find beauty in your morning shit? Sorry. But I'm not sorry. I mean it. Like, get radical about it. Feel weird about it. Feel crazy about it. Can you find beauty in everything? Really allow yourself to be inspired by Venus. Explore how you create beauty and receive beauty. Examine how you show up in your relationships and how you would like to improve in your relationships. Examine the sticky and powerful invitations that come when we experience, witness, or cause injustice. There are powerful invitations that come when we experience, witness, or cause injustice, and it's so important for us to look at our role, the role that we play in the injustices that exist on like a collective grand scale and just in our own little lives. How do you show up? How do you receive those invitations that come up when you are experiencing, witnessing, or maybe even causing injustice or imbalance? And this all includes the big topic of healing and growing past like generational wounding. I believe it was Lindsay Mack who spoke about this, that every time a person who comes from an abusive background decides this stops with me right here, right now, I'm not going to continue these abusive or harmful patterns. Every time that person is engaging in justice work, is engaging in creating better balance, and we do that by radical acceptance of what exists. We do that by looking at like, oh shit, this is a pattern in my generational, timeline, in my ancestral past. This pattern exists and I would like to change it here. That takes acceptance, right? That takes a level, again, it's not approving. It's not, acceptance is different than approving. We accept what has happened, and we do the work to shift it as an individual. That's Libra work. And that's heavy work. That's fucking heavy. So the affirmation for this week is adopt some sort of mantra, some sort of affirmation along the lines of, I surround myself with peaceful and harmonious energy in order to bring balance into my life. I like that affirmation. I surround myself with peaceful and harmonious energy in order to bring balance into my life. How empowering is that? It does a couple things in my brain, right? It reminds me of my power, my ability to bring balance into my life. It reminds me to always be on the lookout for what is surrounding me that is already peaceful and harmonious, and how can I tap into that even more and bring even more of that into my world. So in a nutshell, that's the work of the season. I hope that this lands well for you. I hope that what I've said here resonates for you and inspires you. take some time to consider how you want to engage with Libra season. The next 4-ish weeks, let's see. I should have looked this up before. The sun officially enters Libra on the 22nd. And it looks like we hop into Scorpio on the 22nd of October. So we've got, let's see, I don't know if that's 30 or 31 days. I'm not going to look right now. But we've got exactly 4 weeks, basically. How do you want to engage with the next 4 weeks that will feel the most empowered and empowering? How can you engage with the next 4 weeks while we're swimming in this Libra energy? Or we're not swimming, it's an air sign. While we're flying through this Libra energy, how do you want to tap into it? How do you want to bring the themes and the gifts that Libra brings into your world? You get to do that, baby. You get to do that. You're in charge here. So comment, let me know what you think. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It helps me very, very much. And I'm so honored to have you join. I'm so honored to have you here. Don't hesitate to reach out and let me know how this lands for you. Let me know what your plans are. Big, big plans this Libra season, yeah? Yeah? Okay, take really good care of yourself, take really good care of your world, and I will see you next week. Bye.